As the hero of legend, continually reborn when Hyrule's need is greatest, Link has faced his fair share of adventures. He's sailed the ocean, shrunk to the size of a Minish, and even worked with the alternate versions of himself, acting as the last line of defense between good and the forces of evil. But which of these forces are truly diabolical, and which are just misunderstood friends? I'm Kyle with One Up Binge, and today we'll be looking through the Zelda series to see which characters have made some mistakes and which define darkness to their very core. This is the Legend of Zelda villains, evil to most evil. First though, let's go over the ground rules for this list. 1. We'll be focusing on the main games in the Legend of Zelda universe, as well as the Hyrule Warriors series. This means we will not be including any outside material such as the manga or any side games. Sorry, freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land. 2. Although we will be including a villain from the first Hyrule Warriors game, since the game doesn't take place in the main universe, we won't be referring to the guest appearances of any other villains. 3. Since some characters show up across multiple different games and timelines, we will include those appearances in the same villain ranking unless they're deemed different enough to get their own. And finally, because some villains have very similar roles and motives across the Zelda timeline, we will also be including them in the same ranking unless something distinctly sets them apart. For the start of this list, we'll be covering the redeemable villains. These are characters who either have an understandable motive behind their actions, are victims to powers outside of their control, or eventually turn over a new leaf. The gold medal for redeemable Zelda villains goes to Hilda, the princess of Hyrule from A Link Between Worlds. As Zelda's Hyrulean counterpart, it is her responsibility to care for the people she rules, something she takes very close to heart. However, when her ancestors destroyed their Triforce in an effort to stop the people from warring over it, they doomed Hyrule to eventual ruin without the gods' protection. It was when their world was on the brink of destruction when Yuga discovered the existence of Hyrule, a similar land prospering with its own Triforce. In a state of desperation, Hilda allied with Yuga so that they could resurrect Ganon, kidnap Zelda, and trick the hero of Hyrule, all in an attempt to bring the three pieces of the Hylian Triforce together to take for their own. It's after Yuga's betrayal that Ravio, Link's Hyrulean counterpart, helps her see the error of her ways, and she is able to make peace with the death of her world. She helps Link and Zelda return to Hyrule with their Triforce, where, using its power, they wish for the restoration of Hyrule's Triforce. While her methods may be extreme, her actions are very understandable, if not partially admirable. One notable thing to keep in mind is that when Hyrule destroyed its Triforce, it took generations of slow decay before it was about to perish. While she would be dooming Hyrule, taking their Triforce wouldn't mean the immediate death of all of their people, but would mean the protection of her own. She is a truly tragic character, and although the actions of Link and Zelda give her a happy ending, she was completely set on Hyrule dying to let Hyrule live. Her actions and notable turn for the better puts Hilda at the very top of the list for kindest villain. The next medal goes to the Dark Sorceress, Cia. Taking place in the Hyrule Warriors universe, she was originally a part of a sorceress tasked with watching over the Triforce and the fates of those bound to it. It was there where she found a fascination with Link, the hero of legend that was eternally reborn when the land of Hyrule needed him most. While she could not interfere with the world, she grew to love Link, a feeling that a dark fragment of Ganondorf took advantage of. Using his powers, he cast the light of the sorceress into the being Lana, while warping her desire for Link into the dark being Cia. Using her as a puppet, Ganondorf willed her to open the Gate of Souls to create a monster army that could steal the Triforce and return him to his whole form. While she is a being of evil, Cia is physically hurt when carrying out Ganondorf's will, eventually sealing him and making her own attempt to get the Triforce to win Link's affections. We even get to see a being similar to her being created, as Cia uses Link's overblown confidence with the Master Sword to create multiple Dark Links. Even the hero of legend isn't immune to having his own bad side. It is after being defeated by Link when Cia is able to make amends with Lana, accepting that Link isn't fated to love either of them and slowly fading away. It is in the Definitive Edition expansion where Cia is found alive and being held captive by Phantom Ganon. Once she is freed, she treats the heroes with kindness, helping repair the land of Hyrule and returning with Lana to resume their role as guardians of the Triforce. Despite being a being of pure darkness that was manipulated by Ganondorf, she is still able to show remorse for her actions, and return to being a force for good despite never getting her wish. True, her role in prolonging the war for the Triforce is definitely bad, but her ability to overcome everything and still be a good guy makes her the second most decent character on this list. Acting as another character manipulated by a dark entity, we have the playful Skull Kid. First met as a child in Ocarina of Time, he is a character that can be befriended by playing Saria's song. It's also said that Skull Kids are created when children lose their way in the Lost Woods, fated to forever roam the forest. It is in Majora's Mask where we see him take much more of an important role. Before the events of the game, he is known to frequent the land of Termina, befriending the 4 giants that live there. However, after the giants split into the 4 regions of the world in order to protect it, he thinks they abandoned it, tormenting the people of Termina in a fit of rage. He is subsequently kicked out of Termina, where after meeting the Happy Mask salesman is taken control of by Majora's Mask. Once Link is able to free him of the dark power corrupting him, the 4 giants forgive Skull Kid for his actions, and he quickly befriends Link once again. This alone would portray him as just a child victim to a misunderstanding in the power of Majora's Mask. But sadly, this is not his only appearance. When traveling to the future in Ocarina of Time, he attacks Link for being an adult. Not only that, but he also shows up in Twilight Princess, leading Wolf Link to the Master Sword while also attacking him with puppets. While this can be attributed to his eternal childlike nature, he still never returns to a purely good role like the 2 previous characters did. Still, deep down, he is still very kind, which earns him the 3rd spot on our list. Next up is the powerful apprentice, Burn. Appearing in Spirit Tracks, he is a member of the Lokomo, a tribe tasked with serving the spirits of good and protecting the land from the evil demon Meliodas. When he didn't get the power he desired from the spirits of good, he left Anjean and allied with Chancellor Cole so he could resurrect Meliodas and gain power from him instead. Burn acts as the muscle of the 2, opposing Link and Zelda both at the destruction and reformation of the Tower of Spirits. While he is evil, he doesn't show any malice towards the heroes, only a strong devotion to get what he wants. When Meliodas is finally resurrected in Zelda's body, he demands the demon to give him power for assisting in his freedom, only to be betrayed for his past servitude to the spirits of good. Near death from Meliodas' blast and his battle with Anjean, Link and Zelda bring him to the spirit train to heal. After they find the Bow of Light, Burn helps the heroes find a way to relocate the demon train and stop Meliodas, purely of his own volition. Right before the final battle, Burn offers to take Anjean's place in fighting Meliodas, despite his deep wounds, to take penance for his actions. While Link and Zelda refuse their help, Burn still steps in to help Zelda reclaim her body, with Meliodas killing Burn due to this action. His Lokomo spirit would live on, but his sacrifice isn't diminished by this fact. Despite his evil pursuit for power, he still made major efforts to do the right thing in the end. And while these efforts were only after he was betrayed by Meliodas and Cole, they were still strong enough to earn him a top spot on this list. It also helps that his theme rocks. Following close after him is the right hand of the inverted eye, Suga. Much like Burn, he acts as a helping hand to the evil Yiga clan, a group focused on taking down the royal family after their betrayal of the Sheikah tribe many years prior. To do this, they pledge their allegiance to Calamity Ganon, opposing the heroes from doing anything that could stop his revival. While Suga's emphasis on this cause is unclear, he appears incredibly loyal to his clan, assisting Master Koga on many occasions. Not only that, but he seems to respect the strength of his enemies, as well as show distrust in Astor's goals. This distrust is proven right when, after the resurrection of Calamity Ganon, Astor takes the life of many Yiga foot soldiers to resurrect the Blights. Faced with Astor's betrayal, he puts his life on the line so that Master Koga can escape his grasp. Although Master Koga tries to assist him, Suga is never seen again, implying that he died despite Koga's best efforts. Despite some of his actions being evil, his motives seem to be much less so. The only reason that he goes under Burn on this list is because, unlike him, we never get to see Suga switch to the side of good. This may change in future Age of Calamity DLC, but for the time being, he is an extremely faithful servant that sacrifices himself for the safety of his master. And on that note, as the final redeemable villain on this list, we have the top banana of the Yiga clan, Master Koga. Not to be confused with his descendant seen in Breath of the Wild, Master Koga is the leader of the Yiga clan in Age of Calamity. We first see him disguised as Urbosa in an attempt to turn the Gerudo against Princess Zelda. Once revealing his true form, he appears to act incredibly arrogant, yet cowardly and lazy when faced with conflict. He also doesn't act as a good leader for the Yiga clan, which, depending on how you look at it, could be a good thing or a bad thing. However, when Suga offers to sacrifice himself to let Master Koga escape, he stands his ground to try and save him. After Suga's death, allying the Yiga clan with the rest of Hyrule's forces against Astur and Calamity Ganon. He even becomes a playable character, with side quests that have him take a more active role in helping the Yiga clan and others. The only bad attribute he still has is that he takes on Calamity Ganon mainly for the sake of revenge. And as we've seen with the Yiga clan's original motives, revenge can be used for the sake of both evil and good. Either way, his complete change in character earns him the last spot in this category. Following the redeemable villains, we have the low-level villains. Characters who are definitely evil, but either show little threat compared to the bigger bads on this list, or don't have much of their own agency. Starting this category, we have the Witch of the Drablands, Lady Maud. As seen in Triforce Heroes, fashion rules over everything in the land of Hytopia, and no one was as stylish as Princess Styla, who was adored by her people. However, upon opening a mysterious present sent from a witch, she was cursed to wear an ugly jumpsuit that she couldn't remove. Stricken with shame, she locked herself in her room, sending the kingdom into a state of despair for their princess in fear of Lady Maud's wrath. As such, it was Link's job to venture into the Drablands and acquire the materials necessary to lift the curse. Now, there is one important distinction that has to be made. Although the beginning of the game would make us believe Lady Maud did this out of jealousy for Princess Styla's admiration, we later find out that she truly did think the jumpsuit was the pinnacle of fashion, and that the present had good intentions. She did not know of the kingdom's reaction until encountering Link, expecting he had been sent to thank her for the gift. Her actions turn evil when she refuses to remove the curse, attacking Link with her pets. She believes that her sense of fashion is superior to anyone else's, and constantly berates Link as someone seemingly of lower class than herself. After being beaten at the Sky Temple, she forfeits the last of the materials, teleporting away to finally be left alone. While her actions are fairly small in relation to everyone else on this list, her extreme arrogance and disrespect to Link are enough to classify her as a low-level villain. Next, we have both the central antagonists to the Oracle games, Onyx and Varen. Appearing in Oracle of Seasons, Onyx is a dragon summoned from the Dark Realm by the Twin Rova to help resurrect the Demon King, Ganon. To do this, he captured Din, the Oracle of Seasons, and submerged the Temple of Seasons into Subrosia. This would send the Seasons of Holodrum into chaos, lighting one of the three flames needed for Ganon to return. While Link is able to defeat Onyx and return the Seasons to working order, he mocks Link's efforts with his last breath, knowing that the flame of destruction was still lit successfully. Varen's motives are very similar, being instructed by the Twin Rova to possess the Oracle of Ages, so she could bring sadness to the people of Labrynna. To do this, Varen would use the Oracle's powers to travel to Labrynna's past, convincing Queen Ambi to make her people work endlessly on the Black Tower. Link would also be able to defeat Varen and show Queen Ambi the error of her ways, but not before the Flame of Sorrows was lit as well. As you can see, Onyx and Varen basically play the same roles, just in different games. Not only are they the same beings from the Dark Realm, underlings to Twin Rova, and the characters that bring harm to a specific land, they also both use good people as unwilling human shields, with Onyx using Din and Varen using Queen Ambi. The reason they're so high on this list is because despite the formidable threat they pose, they are basically just glorified underlings to the Twin Rova. Mind you, they are definitely willing to do so, but it's hard to tell where their own evil motivations end and their loyalty to the Twin Rova begins. For the last characters classified as low-level villains, we have Chancellor Cole and the Dark Prophet Astur. First, let's go over Chancellor Cole. Appearing in Spirit Tracks, he acts as the advisor and guardian of Princess Zelda. However, she had suspicions of his true intentions, which are proven correct when he reveals himself to be a demon with the intent to use Zelda's body as a vessel to resurrect the Demon King Meliodas. He even succeeds in doing so, separating Zelda's spirit from her body and freeing Meliodas from his imprisonment under the Tower of Spirits. During his appearances, he mainly uses Burn to fight for him, although he does offer a supporting role when fighting Meliodas on the demon train. He acts incredibly rude and cocky to Link and Zelda, even when undercover, and betrays Burn despite all he did to help Cole's efforts. In the final battle, he becomes extremely cowardly when defeated, facing his comeuppance when Meliodas possesses his body in a last-ditch attempt to destroy the world. Now let's focus on Astor. Astor is the Dark Prophet who assists in the return of Calamity Ganon during the events of Age of Calamity. While his backstory is kept fairly vague, it is implied that he was the one who originally prophesied the return of Calamity Ganon to King Rome. He most likely did this to set the excavation of the Guardians and Divine Beasts into motion, which Calamity Ganon would eventually take over and turn against them. He takes more of a direct role when a part of Calamity Ganon appeared in the past, showing visions of the future that the small guardian, Teriko, was trying to prevent. Allying with the Yiga clan, he uses his power to try and stop the heroes from changing the future, eventually betraying them by using their life energy to resurrect Ganon's blights. He sees the Calamity as a force he can control, which is proven wrong when Harbinger Ganon consumes him to complete his resurrection. Now, these two characters may have even more similarities than Onyx and Varen, despite being in completely different games. They both collaborate with the royal family with their own motives in mind, attempt to bring back a dark being of destruction that has been sealed, ally with others to fulfill their goals, betray them, and ultimately get taken over by the very thing they try to control. The reasons we rank them as worse than Onyx and Varen is, for one, they show much more agency. While they are also trying to resurrect someone, they are ultimately the sole masterminds behind the events, due to their lust for power. And as stated earlier, the characters they betray, Burn and Master Koga, go on to do a complete 180 and become some of the kindest villains on this list. At the point when they betrayed them, there was no chance of Burn or Master Koga getting in the way of their goals. But they did anyway, out of a sick loathing and hatred for others. While they aren't anything but pawns in the end, their detestable actions land them right here on the tail end of this category. And with that said, we move on to the next section. This third category is the powerful villains, basically covering any characters who show a high degree of evil and threat to the world, but don't quite reach the level of godlike status. They may be pawns in a bigger scheme, the inventors of malicious plots, or even act as antagonists in multiple games, but no matter what, they are not to be treated lightly. First up, we have the main antagonists from Link's Awakening, the Nightmares. The Nightmares were the collective beings that forced the Windfish into a never-ending slumber. Also, they could rule over the land in his dreams, Koholint Island. However, Link washes up on the island after a bolt of lightning strikes him unconscious. Under the guidance of the owl, who we later learn is actually the manifestation of the Windfish's subconscious, he sets off to collect the 8 instruments needed to wake the Windfish and return to his own world. In an attempt to stop Link, the Nightmares create all of the monsters on the island, hide the instruments in their dungeons, and oppose him as each of the bosses in the game. Now, while you may think that Link is the actual villain in this game, as awakening the Windfish will make all of the residents of Koholint Island disappear, you have to remember that dreams, by nature, are meant to be temporary. The Nightmares are the ones who tried to make it live on, not only putting the Windfish and Link in an eternal sleep, but ruling over Koholint Island and its inhabitants. Their motives are far from noble, even taking the form of Aghanim and Ganon during Link's final confrontation against them. The reason they get placed so low on this list is because the Nightmares show both the desire to bring chaos to the land as well as the will to take power for themselves, combining the motives of the previous 2 rankings. Not only that, but the Nightmares are a far more nebulous thing, somehow able to create monsters, dungeons, and change shape at will. Considering the reach of their influence across Koholint, it's fair to say they deserve a spot in the powerful villains category. Next are the Sorceress Sisters and surrogate mothers to Ganondorf, the Twinrova. Most recognized by their appearance in Ocarina of Time, Kome and Kotake control the powers of fire and ice. secretly leading the Gerudo tribe and acting as the protectors of the sixth sage, Nabooru. To do this, they brainwash her when Link was a child, forcing her to do their evil bidding for 7 years before he could come to her aid. They fight Link at the end of the Spirit Temple, acting as the penultimate bosses before Ganondorf himself. Now, as you may remember from our Onyx and Varen ranking, the Twinrova also take a background role in Oracle of Ages and Seasons, instructing their actions in an attempt to resurrect Ganon. Once the flames of sorrow and destruction are lit, they make an attempt to light the final flame of despair by sacrificing Princess Zelda. Luckily, Link is able to intervene, beating the sisters before they're able to do so. In a last-ditch attempt to achieve their goal, they sacrifice themselves instead of Zelda, resulting in an incomplete version of Ganon coming forth. As both the masterminds behind the Oracle games and the closest servants to Ganondorf, the Twinrova present a great threat in the Zelda universe, on top of just being mean to Link. However, we do need to mention 2 notable outliers to their otherwise dastardly actions. In Majora's Mask, Kotake and Kome show up as a potion shop owner and a tour guide, offering to help Link on his quest. This can be quickly overwritten, as the land of Termina has many lookalikes to characters in Ocarina of Time that are actually completely different characters. What can't be written off is the end of their dispute in the Spirit Temple. After being bested by Link, they appear to gain glowing halos over their heads, and shortly thereafter get pulled towards a holy light. While this could just signify death, it could also symbolize the Twinrova going to heaven. This would be highly contradictory to their actions, as their last words are even promising to haunt Link. But maybe protecting their surrogate son, Ganondorf, was enough to get them past the pearly gates. Still, this doesn't rectify their actions to Nabooru, or the residents of Holodrum and Labrynna, placing them under the nightmares. Third, in the powerful villains category, we have the demon Vaati. First canonically appearing in the Minish cap, he first appears as a member of the Minish, working as an apprentice to the craftsman Eslo. However, he soon found himself fascinated with the evil in the hearts of men and the seemingly limitless power of the Light Force. Using Eslo's mage cap, he transforms himself into a dark sorcerer, cursing Eslo into a living cap and attempting to steal the Light Force from the human world. When he fails to find it in the bound chest, accidentally releasing all the evil sealed in it back into the world, he impersonates King Daltus and orders his vessels to search for the Light Force. It is when Link and Eslo reforge the Picori blade into the Force Sword, when Vaati finds out that the Light Force was held inside Princess Zelda, stealing her away so that he could extract it. By the time Link catches up with him, he has already absorbed some of the Light Force, turning into many different demonic forms before he is eventually destroyed. When we see him next in Four Swords, he has no memory of his previous life. Still transformed from his previous encounter, he declares himself a wind mage, taking over the Palace of Winds and kidnapping many beautiful women. While an unnamed hero seals him in the Four Sword, he eventually breaks free and abducts Princess Zelda, leading Link to prove his worth to the Great Fairies and sealing Vaati once again. Finally, Vaati is freed once more in Four Swords Adventures by Shadow Link tricking our hero into drawing the Four Sword. He acts as the one who spread the darkness across Hyrule and robbed the sword of its power. While Vaati is posed to be the main antagonist of the game, it is revealed that he is only a pawn to Ganon. He is once again fought at the Palace of Winds before finally being defeated for good. Similar to Twinrova, Vaati acts as a main antagonist throughout the Zelda series, even assisting in Ganon's plans to spread darkness across the world. While his second appearance in Four Swords is fairly tame, his actions in both the Minish Cap and Four Swords Adventures are incredibly malicious and immoral. The one thing that assures his ranking below the Twinrova is that when switching forms at the end of the Minish Cap, he briefly turns into Vaati's Wrath. This form is named as embodiment of pure evil, consumed by a hunger for destruction. While Link would promptly defeat him, and his later resurrection would forget he ever had such motives, it is clear that if Link had lost in that moment, Vaati would have consumed the rest of the Light Force and destroyed the entire world. Surpassing Vaati, we have the servant of the Demon Lord Demise, Girahim. Preferred to be called Lord Girahim, he acts as the central antagonist in Skyward Sword. He rules over the monsters on the surface in Demise's absence, with his main goal being to capture Zelda and use her goddess spirit to resurrect him. As Link is also chasing after Zelda, the two often butt heads over the course of his adventures. Girahim's behavior is incredibly estranged, acting incredibly cocky, dramatic, and bloodthirsty throughout his encounters. He fights Link 3 times along with ordering actions of multiple bosses, proving quite a threat each time. When he is finally able to use Zelda to resurrect Demise, he gloats that the world will now be covered in darkness, being revealed to Fi's counterpart to Demise. Despite losing his physical form when summoned as Demise's sword, he takes immense joy in fulfilling his goal. The problem with ranking Girahim on this list is that his actions often contradict each other. At one moment, he offers to spare Link's life, and in another, he describes the gruesome way he will die by his hands. At one point, he summons monsters to basically act as cannon fodder to Link, or otherwise face a fate worse than death by his hands. And in the next, he sacrifices his physical form due to his immense loyalty to Demise. This constant back and forth of intentions is what makes him such an unpredictable villain. However, there is no doubt that he is a being of evil, and while he may toy around with Link, his true purpose is to kill the hero and bring destruction to the land. Whether he is a true demon lord or if that's just what he likes to call himself, he presents a threat worthy of the name. Going down the list of crazy villains, we have the supposed King of Twilight, Zant. Zant is the member of the Twilight that allied with Ganondorf to usurp the Twilight Realm's throne and invade Hyrule. He has a strong desire for power, caring little for the people he rules, Twilight or otherwise. He first meets Ganondorf after losing the Twilight throne and the powers that come with it, thinking he is some sort of god. Using the newfound powers Ganondorf gives him, he curses Midna into the form of an imp, stealing a part of her powers and undergoing the process of spreading Twilight across Hyrule so that they can rule the Light World. He turns the rest of the Twilight into shadow beasts to act as his army, using them to take over Hyrule Castle. While he appears calm, it is only when Link confronts him in the Twilight Realm when he reveals his true personality, behaving incredibly erratic, childish, and insane. While his anger for losing the throne and wanting revenge for being stuck in the Twilight Realm are understandable, the blame is placed fully on him and the Twilight's ancestors, starting the Interloper War. Not to mention that his ends nowhere near justify the means, cursing his own people as well as turning the people of Hyrule into spirits. Zant fits all the traits of being a megalomaniac, and proves to only be stopped by a chance meeting between Link and Midna. He may be revealed to just be a puppet to Ganondorf's plans, but for all intents and purposes, he was the tactician behind the conquering of Hyrule. His hatred and pettiness know no bounds, landing him incredibly low on this list. Plus, we'll never forgive him for almost killing Midna. Earning the last spot in the powerful villains category is the artsy sorcerer Yuga. He acts as the true primary antagonist of A Link Between Worlds, seemingly Hilda's loyal servant up until the very end. As stated at the start of this list, Hilda and Yuga allied together to steal Hyrule's Triforce, all in her attempt to save Lorule from the brink of ruin. While the act of stealing the 7 sages in Zelda isn't completely malicious as Yuga just follows orders, he does go much further than necessary, turning many of Hyrule's subjects into immovable paintings and creating monsters that attack them. He also speaks down to Link and the whole of Hyrule, referring to him as a worm on multiple occasions. It is during the final battle against Yuga when we learn of his true intentions. While he had assumed a loyal role to Hilda, he had always planned to betray her, turning her into a painting and absorbing the Triforce of Wisdom. With 2 pieces of the Triforce under his command, he attempts to finally defeat Link as to steal his Triforce of Courage and take his place among the gods. Now, when considering his level of evil, you have to understand the reach of his actions. Where Zant may have cursed both the inhabitants of the Twilight Realm and Light World in his quest for power, Yuga planned to doom the people of Hyrule to ruin and destroy Lorule, all because they were, quote, too ugly for the new world he was going to create. Where Zant was given some of Ganondorf's powers, Yuga fully fused with Ganon as well as absorbed the Triforce of Wisdom. Yuga was so narcissistic that he was going to recreate Lorule in his own so-called perfect image. There is not much more a mortal being could do to be this evil. While Hilda's intentions may have been for the good of her people, Yuga's could not be further from them, putting a definitive end to this category. And finally, we get to the last category on our list. We have the godlike villains, beings of immense power that transcend the characters previously covered on the list. Evil is written into their very soul, and the question of what they will corrupt is only determined by the reach of their influence. Starting us off, we have the iconic King of Thieves, Ganondorf, as well as his A Link to the Past counterpart, Aghanim. Appearing many times across the Zelda universe, Ganondorf is part of the Gerudo, a tribe of female warriors and thieves in which only one male is born every century. Due to this, becoming king of the Gerudo is his birthright, yet he lusts after the power of the Triforce to rule over the entire world. We also find out in Skyward Sword that he is a reincarnation of Demise, cursed to eternally oppose the goddess Hylia and her chosen hero. Ganondorf shows a great ability to control and manipulate others, both gaining the trust of the King of Hyrule in Ocarina of Time and influencing Zant to follow his will in Twilight Princess. While he is strong enough to take over Hyrule Castle on his own, he only becomes stronger when stealing the Triforce of Power from the Sacred Realm, gaining the ability to conjure dark magic and ruling over Hyrule in the adult timeline. It is revealed in Wind Waker that part of his aspiration to conquer Hyrule comes from the harshness of the Gerudo Desert, but his actions far outweigh any noble desires. He placed death curses on the Deku Tree and Lord Jabu Jabu when they wouldn't give him the spiritual stones, destroyed Castletown, kidnapped young girls in Wind Waker, and set forth all the events of Twilight Princess on top of fiercely opposing our heroes. He will do nearly anything to gain Hyrule and the Triforce, crushing anything or anyone that gets in his way. The reason Aghanim goes in Ganondorf's ranking is because, much like his actions in Ocarina of Time, Aghanim is a dark wizard who makes a false alliance with the King of Hyrule. Using this position, he kills the King of Hyrule, brainwashing Hyrule's soldiers and kidnapping the Seven Sages and Zelda in an attempt to break the seal into the Dark World. While his defeat early into A Link to the Past would normally put him higher on the list, not only does he succeed in his plans, but is later revealed to be Ganon's alter ego. Due to being another human form of Ganon, on top of his other similar actions, he earns the spot as a godlike villain. In the next spot in this category, we have the evil phantom Bellum. He is a monstrous, squid-like creature with multiple dark eyes that resides in the sea in Phantom Hourglass, trying to consume the life force of all living beings. While the Ocean King was supposed to protect those in his domain, Bellum was able to seal him away in the Ocean King's temple, slowly draining away his life force into the sands of Hours, and using it to create monsters that sealed the fairies of wisdom, power, and courage. He also creates the ghost ship to lure more people to drain the life force from, as we see happen with Link in Tetra. With Tetra petrified, Link teams up with Oshus to form the Phantom Sword, as Bellum and his phantoms are nearly impenetrable without it. Bellum also shows the ability to take control of other beings in the final fight against him, possessing both the Ghost Ship and Captain Linebeck in a last attempt to defeat Link. Link is able to defeat Bellum without hurting Linebeck, absorbing him into the Phantom Sword and ending his evil reign. Bellum is a large-scale version of a parasite. Not only does his name mean war in Latin, as his goals are to drain all life from the world, but he possesses few weak points, even his minions taking great lengths to be destroyed. He takes underhanded measures to survive, tricking and manipulating others to feed his desire for power. Bellum, by nature, is one of the strongest and most malevolent creatures on this list, earning his place right near Ganondorf. For the next entry, we have a trifecta of dark entities: Calamity Ganon, Mindless Ganon, and Shadow Link. Acting as the main antagonist of both Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, Calamity Ganon is a primal evil that lays dormant under Hyrule Castle. After the Sheikah were able to use their technology to seal him away for 10,000 years, he broke the seal and took control of the Guardians and Divine Beasts meant to contain him. Using this power, he brought destruction to the land of Hyrule, killing the 4 champions, destroying multiple towns, and spreading his poisonous malice. Although Zelda was able to contain him in Hyrule Castle once more, his influence on the Guardians and Divine Beasts did not falter, going as far as to even revive any fallen monsters on the event of the Blood Moon. He is described as a being of pure malice and hatred, with his only desire being to ravage the world. Although he is never able to fully regenerate a physical form outside of a ramshackle body of malice and Sheikah tech, the threat he poses is one of the strongest in the series. Next to the Calamity is another version of Ganon that appeared at the end of the Oracle games, Mindless Ganon. If you might recall, while the Twinrova were able to light 2 of the 3 flames needed for Ganon's resurrection, they were unable to make the sacrifice needed for the 3rd, instead sacrificing themselves. Because of this, only his physical form and strength were reborn, losing his intelligence for a desire to kill and destroy everything. Although Link was able to defeat him right after being summoned, his power and motivations mirror very close to Calamity Ganon, being stopped before he was ever able to spread his influence. As the final of the 3, we have Shadow Link from Four Swords Adventures. Not to be confused with Dark Link, who is just an obstacle for Link made out of shadow magic. Shadow Link is a demon created by the power of the Dark Mirror. He is made from the evil thoughts and resentment the Ganondorf from Twilight Princess had for Link, used by the current reincarnation of Ganon to torment the people of Hyrule. Not only does he take pleasure in causing mischief for the hero, but he also tricks Link into releasing Vaati, acting as an enemy many times throughout his adventure. Shadow Link acts as the main force Ganon uses to spread his influence, and it is said that the Dark Mirror can make an endless supply of them until the mirror itself is destroyed. Considering the nature of his being and sheer power the Shadow Link poses, they earn their spot right next to Calamity and Mindless Ganon as a force of pure hatred and destruction. Barely missing the ranks of the top 3 evil villains on this list, we have the Demon King Meliodas. 100 years before the events of Spirit Tracks, Tetra and her pirates found a new land protected by the spirits of good, and established the new kingdom of Hyrule. While all was peaceful, Meliodas soon rose to power, spreading destruction and bloodshed in his wake. A great war began between Meliodas and the spirits of good, and while the spirits weren't able to destroy him, they used the last of their power to imprison him under the Tower of Spirits. He was kept at bay until Chancellor Cole, in an attempt to return Meliodas to his former strength, destroyed the spirit tracks and stole Princess Zelda's body as a vessel for him to be reborn. Meliodas' spirit form is revealed in the final boss of the game, where after being unable to repossess Zelda, he instead possesses the unwilling Cole. He takes on a form similar to that of Dark Beast Ganon, where despite being slowly rejected by Cole's body, he states that he still has enough time to reduce the world to ruin. His existence is very similar to that of Calamity Ganon, both spirit-like entities set on destroying the land of Hyrule. Meliodas shows clear rage on his face, with red eyes that seethe resentment from within. The reason he gets placed lower than the Calamity and the rest is that not only were the forces of Hyrule originally unable to stop him, but the spirits of good as well. He was able to deplete the power of gods, and was only eventually stopped by multiple powerful relics like the Locomoto Sword and Spirit Flute. This overwhelming strength and force for evil is not to be underestimated. Our bronze medal of evil has to go to the depraved Majora. It is said to be an ancient evil being sealed in a tribal mask to use for hexing rituals. However, fearing the destruction it could cause, the mask was sealed in shadow, eventually being found and collected by the Happy Mask salesman. In the events of Majora's Mask, we see Majora's spirit possess Skull Kid, creating havoc and trouble for Link and others before calling down the moon to consume the whole of Termina. Although the true nature of Majora is unknown, it acts incredibly deranged and childish, craving the misery and annihilation of others. It seemingly sees the final fight between itself and Link as a game between good guys and bad guys, despite turning into multiple disturbing forms. The wicked power of the mask is seemingly unfathomable, only possibly matched by the Fierce Deity mask. The sheer depravity and darkness of Majora's Mask makes it one of the worst villains in the series, earning him the bronze medal on this list. Taking this silver medal for our eccentric evildoers, we have the Dark Lord Ganon. Most notable for his appearance in the Fallen Hero timeline, he is the result of Ganondorf beating Link at the end of Ocarina of Time. Possessing all 3 pieces of the Triforce, Ganondorf turns into the Demon King Ganon, with the 7 sages subsequently sealing him in the Sacred Realm. His wish to the Triforce was to turn the realm into the Dark World, tricking many who desired the Triforce's power into becoming part of his monster army. Although Link would be able to stop Ganon from corrupting Hyrule in A Link to the Past, his influence would be seen in many games afterwards as other dark beings would attempt to resurrect him. Even in his incomplete resurrection, actions, he is seen as the ultimate evil, with a power and darkness unmatched by anything else in their time. Whether fueled by a desire to rule or eradicate, Ganon is the worst recurring villain in the Zelda universe, whose evil is only outmatched by the original Demon King himself. Finally, the gold medal of evil has to go to the entity that started it all, Demise. Introduced in Skyward Sword, Demise is an immortal being that had conquered time itself and was the source of all monsters. He and his demonic army appeared from fissures in the earth, set on stealing the Triforce so he could rule the world for eternity. After an immense bout of bloodshed, the goddess Hylia and the original hero of legend were able to send the Triforce into the sky with the humans, sealing Demise on the surface using the Master Sword. Many years later, Girahim is able to resurrect him using Zelda's goddess Spirit, with Demise moments away from becoming unstoppable when Link interrupts him. He allows Link to face him, as Demise had dominated all other beings besides the gods. Link was able to beat him with the reforged Master Sword, but with his last breath, Demise curses the descendants of Link and Zelda to be followed by an incarnation of his hatred and desire for world domination. This being would become Ganondorf and Ganon, bringing darkness and destruction to Hyrule across the ages. Without him, most of the villains on this list wouldn't even exist. He is the paragon for evil in the Zelda universe, facing no true equal and earning the gold medal for most evil villain in the Zelda franchise. But what do you think? Which Zelda villain is truly the worst of the worst? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, and if you need a one-up, make sure to binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite games. Thanks for watching.